Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be giving my long overdue prospect pool rankings. This will be part 1 of 4, going through the bottom 8 prospect pools in the NHL. I'll get these 4 videos out in the next couple of weeks. Then by around that time, NHL season should be wrapping up. The Cup final should be almost wrapped up or have just begun. And then we'll get back into some draft preview content with the NHL draft coming up. But we'll jump right into the prospect pool rankings with number 32, and it is the Eastern Conference champion Florida Panthers. This is what you expect of a team that's been to 3 straight Stanley Cup finals. They don't really have anything in the system. Their top prospect, Mackie Samoskevich, graduated this year, played a decent chunk of NHL games, hasn't played much in the playoffs since that Tampa Bay series, but still had a really solid season as a rookie, and some positive things to look forward to if you're a Panthers fan as your top young guy. But the actual prospect pool, there's really just not much there. Jack Devine at the top of the pool had a pretty good season at Denver. He's been a pretty consistent player at Denver, especially for a 7th round pick. And then going down, Grayson Sachin's solid piece. Elias Eriksson's pretty solid. Matvei Shuravin, he's got some decent things. Simon Zether. Hunter St. Martin's had a pretty good Memorial Cup with Medicine Hat. He's played pretty well for them and is looking like he could be a solid bottom 6 guy down the line for the Panthers. But yeah, overall, this pool, nothing overly exciting. Jack Devine is a decent piece who could end up playing a middle 6 role down the line, but really no one to be super excited about and not a whole lot of depth. But as I said, that's to be expected of a team of this caliber. Moving on to a big faller from where we were with these pools just under a year ago, and that's the Dallas Stars. A lot of their top prospects have graduated, and again, they're on the verge of being eliminated by the Oilers. Those two play tonight as I'm recording this. But yeah, they're on the verge of being eliminated by the Oilers, and they've made some big splash moves to try and accelerate their winner, to try and get over that hump in the Western Conference. It hasn't quite worked yet, but that's the reason why this pool is so low. Maverick Bourque and Leon Bichsel, 2 of their top prospects, graduated this year. They are no longer under prospect status. They played a decent chunk of NHL games, both of whom were solid. And then obviously they traded Logan Stankoven for Mikko Rantanen to the Carolina Hurricanes, who was their top prospect, and he also would have graduated as well after he played a full rookie season. So leaving you with not much left in this pool. Emil Hemming leads the way as their 1st-round pick last year. He had a bit of an underwhelming year this past season in Barrie. Really just didn't take over as you would have expected or hoped. And I think a bigger area where he kind of disappeared were the World Juniors. He really kind of fell into the background of that Finnish team, which is a really good team. So that might be part of the reason for it. We'll see if maybe next year, as he's a little bit older, if he'll play a bigger role on that roster. But yeah, he kind of fell into the background of that team. Didn't really shine or have any crazy big moments as you would expect of a player like this. So a bit of underwhelming season for him. And then yeah, down the board, Justin Herwickian, undrafted free agent, who actually was really good in the AHL this year, but he's already 24. He was nearly point per game as a rookie in the AHL, so that could be a promising 4th line kind of player, maybe 3rd line if it can translate well, but you know, a really good season, one of the best NCAA free agents this past year. Armin Minedian has been a pretty solid defenseman over at BC these past couple of years. Nothing too special, but I think could be a potential, bottom pair shutdown defenseman down the line. And Christian Kyrou is another solid piece there. Antonio Strange is real good skater. We've all seen the highlights of him skating with the puck, but overall there's not a ton more to his game. And yeah, down this board, nothing really too crazy in this prospect pool. Pretty top heavy, or not top heavy, but there's a few decent guys at the top, and the bottom, it bottoms out pretty quickly. But again, these are all contending teams. There's no reason for the prospect pools to be all that good. At number 30, we have the Boston Bruins. It's a very interesting pool. They've had a lot of interesting resurgences this year. It's been a weird year for them, going through their bit of a retool. They've definitely done some good things to improve this prospect pool, and they also are going to improve it a ton after the draft with their top pick. They're going to get a pretty elite level player that's going to rise them up these rankings quite a bit. But at the top, Fabian Lysell just kind of has yet to been able to make that jump to the NHL, and it's really unfortunate because this was the year to do it. There was tons of opportunities for him, and he just couldn't carve out a full-time role. 22 years old now, we'll see if he can ever take that jump, but it's been kind of a disappointing showing for him. Fraser Minton, they acquired by trading Brandon Carlo to the Toronto Maple Leafs. For Fraser Minton, has always been the same story for me. I think could be a good 2A, 3C, nothing more. But he had a pretty good showing coming over when he came over to Boston after not a crazy good year in Toronto with the Marlies, and again couldn't find a role in that on the Leafs after playing 15 games. But I think he could be a 3C next season for the Bruins, maybe a 4C, and we'll see if he can carve out a role there. Dean Letourneau, their first round pick, high upside but very low floor, and this past season we saw that for him at the NCAA level, his first year at the NCAA level, coming straight out of high school, and really was underwhelming in Boston College. Did not do much of anything all year long, and it was a bit of a disappointing year. But again, he's a project kind of player. This is going to be a long road for Letourneau and developmentally wise. But as a 6'7" centerman, there's a lot of potential to like with Letourneau. But he only had 3 assists in 36 games, so nothing too positive there. But still a solid prospect, first round pick for a reason. Dans Lockmelies had a really good year. He's bounced around. He's now playing in Providence and was really, really good in his few games over at Providence. And then went to the World Championships for Latvia and was also really, really good there. So there's something promising with him. William Zellers, acquired from the Colorado Avalanche, I believe. Another player who really, really had a solid season. He's just a solid player all around. Elliot Grunwald, solid defensive prospect. Christian Pelosi's okay. I like Georgi Merkulov. He's had some really good AHL seasons, but again, he's been another guy who has had the opportunities but has yet to be able to string it together full time in the NHL. And is kind of getting up there in age, so who knows if he can make that jump, but a skilled forward who's done some good stuff in the AHL. But this pool honestly has some decent depth pieces that could end up being depth NHL pieces much further down the line, playing on those fourth lines, bottom pairs. But they just lack that top end guy, and I think once they get that through the draft this year, along with their other draft picks they have, they're going to rise a decent chunk up this ranking. Next up at 29, the Tampa Bay Lightning. This prospect pool is really, really bad, but unlike the teams below them, they have a top-end guy, an elite-level prospect. That's the Hobey Baker winner, Isaac Howard, who had a crazy breakout season for MSU this year over in the NCAA. But this pool is going to slip much further down when Isaac Howard ends up leaving. It seems inevitable at this point that either he gets traded or he chooses not to sign his ELC. It'll just pick a franchise to sign with after that in the following summer. But I think Tampa will just look to recoup some assets and trade him this offseason. But Connor Geekie, who they acquired for Mikhail Sergachev, then has now graduated out of prospect status, playing a decent chunk this year for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And yeah, it's really just Isaac Howard. That's what this pool is. So when Isaac Howard leaves, this pool will be the worst in the league. I could say that confidently. But Isaac Howard's a great player, and I think he's going to be a super high scoring top 6 winger down the line. And I think whatever team looks to acquire him is going to be getting a real solid prospect for the future. And someone who's, I think, is probably NHL ready as well. Some other names you can mention: Ethan Gauthier, a decent piece. He played for the World Junior team for Team Canada this past year. It was okay, nothing too special. Plays a good gritty game. He has that kind of that grit, that edge to his game that he could play well in the bottom 6 role down the line. Dylan Dukes had some solid years at Michigan, played over at Syracuse this past season. He's a decent player there, but yeah, it's really just, there is not a lot here for the Tampa Bay Lightning to be looking forward to. They're a good team, but they're not quite on the level of some of these other teams, so they gotta try and keep building forward and try and get back to their top end levels that they were at before to make this really bad prospect pool worthwhile, or they're going to fall into the same cycle the Penguins were in. But we'll see if they fall there. They've got a lot more runway right now with their top end players as they're a little younger. At 28, a team that, similar to Tampa, isn't quite in that true contention area, but it's the Ottawa Senators. This pool is pretty abysmal beyond the top end guys. Again, it's a positive thing for them is they've got to, or not a positive, sorry, a negative thing for them is they have to lose one of their next 2 first-round picks. The thought was they're going to just give up this 21st overall pick this year, because why risk it being any worse than that the following year when you could be giving up a Gavin McKenna shot lottery ticket. But it seems like they're going to opt to keep this pick, and the main reason for that is because they're going to keep trying they've been trying to negotiate their punishment down, and they keep trying to get it lower and lower and lower. And they're going to see if maybe they can work like giving up a second round pick. So they feel the longer they push back their choice of pick, the better chance they have of negotiating it down. I doubt that, but still, it's a choice they're making. So they'll have a first round pick added to this group this summer. But at the top, Carter Yakimchuk, their first round pick, 7th overall, didn't quite have a crazy developmental season. Kind of was at the same point production level, same defensive level as he was the year before in the WHL. So I think he'd benefit from coming over and getting some run at the NHL level. He was really close to making the Sens opening day roster, but after a really, really good preseason, but just missed out, and it went back to the WHL. Was snubbed to the junior team. I would expect if he's not carved out a full-time NHL role this year, he'll be on the junior team next year, or he should be. That'll be a good experience for him, but I just don't think there's a lot for him to learn at the WHL level, so we'll see how that progresses. Levi Merilainen rose big time on my prospect pools in my goalie rankings this season. I wasn't all in on Merilainen. I thought Sogard was better, and I thought Merilainen was just kind of a backup down the line, but he really impressed me and a lot of other people this past season. He's had some really good AHL seasons he's put together, but this year was by far his best. 37 games with a .913 save percentage and 2.37 goals against. Gets the call up to the NHL level around January because Ullmark was out, Forsberg was beat up, so they needed a goalie, and Sogard has dealt with injuries all year. Called up Merilainen, 12 games, 1.99 goals against average with a .925 save percentage, an absolutely insane run with 3 shutouts in those 12 games. 8-3-1 was his record. He had an amazing run for the Sens and some real positive stuff to build on. I would imagine with Anton Forsberg's contract expiring this summer, the Sens let him walk and choose to call up Merilainen to have him play as the full-time backup to Ullmark. And it allows you to probably give Ullmark a little more rest because they didn't have much faith in Forsberg. Merilainen looks like an NHL-ready goalie who had a real big breakout season this year. And on the other side of things with their goalies, the next prospect, Matt Sogard, had a really unfortunate year, just dealt with injuries, couldn't stay healthy, and he has not been able to make that full-time jump to the NHL level. The tools are there, the physical traits are there, he just has to put it all together. I think there is a ton of potential there, but it's getting to the point where that potential, it's getting harder and harder to see it ever be realized at this age, but we'll see. I still believe in the size and the physical traits he has, but yeah, he definitely slid a decent chunk after this year because just couldn't stay healthy, couldn't prove anything this year with a good opportunity. And now the board, Xavier Bourgault traded for Robbie Yarvanty with the Oilers, quick prospect swap. Former first-round pick who just hasn't been able to find his game. Thomas Hamara is a decent player. I think he could be a bottom pair guy down the line. I've liked his game a little bit, but again, nothing crazy. Stephen Halliday, Tyler Boucher, their 10th overall pick from a while back, has really not been impressive at all, unfortunately for them, and that's been a real just kind of thorn in their side. That pick could have been so many different other guys at that spot that went after him that they passed on, and it's really just backfired big time. So that's definitely unfortunate, but there's some solid players in the Sens pool down the board that have had some decent seasons, but nothing too crazy, nothing that you're going to look at and really expect massive things from in the future. And this year they also had one graduate in Tyler Clevin who has looked really solid and has carved out a full-time role in the NHL. At number 27, we've got the Colorado Avalanche, a team that has really sold the farm to win these past years, and it has not worked out, especially this past year. That trade for Brock Nelson is not going to look good down the line, trading a first and Callum Ritchie. Cal Ritchie's an amazing prospect who I am in love with. I love his game. I think he's going to be such a good top 6 centerman in the future. And it leaves the Colorado prospect pool very, very bare. He was really holding them up. At the top, you've got Ilya Nabokov, who's a really solid Russian goaltender from the KHL. Their second-round pick last year was drafted as an overager, but with goalies, it's not as much of a red flag to me because of the fact that they take a little longer to reach their potential, to reach their levels. At 22 years old, he's been really good at the KHL level. A .923 save percentage, a 2.22 goals against average in 49 starts in probably the second best league in the world. Pretty positive stuff there after a .930 the year previous and a really good MHL season the year before that. So really positive stuff for Nabokov. He's one of the top goalie prospects in the league, holding this pool up. At the next spot for them, they've got Mikhail Gulyayev, a real smooth skating Russian defenseman, first round pick in 2023. Solid piece. I think Colorado will do a good job developing him. He's had some solid production at the KHL level, and we'll see when he eventually makes the jump what he can be, but solid piece there. Oscar Olausen has really just bottomed out a little bit in this pool, playing in the AHL, their first round pick from 2021. He just hasn't found his game offensively. I really liked him in that draft class, and I thought Colorado was getting a pretty good value pick at 28th overall, but it hasn't really worked out as you would have hoped. He had 20 points in 30 games last year. This past season, he had 26 in 61, so just overall less production for him this past year. And has played a few NHL games sporadically here and there and has yet to register a point. But yeah, it's been rough for Olausen. He's similar to a guy like Fabian Lysell, like I mentioned earlier, where like them coming out, really solid prospects, but have yet to take that jump that you would expect of a first round pick of this age. So you're still holding out some hope, but it's definitely fading here. And then down the board, there's some decent guys. Sean Behrens is a decent player who's played for Denver. Max Caron, Will Dufour, they got back from the Islanders in a little swap there. It's a decent player to help keep the prospect pool up a little bit. Podarkov is a decent Russian prospect. Trent Miners had some decent years. So, some okay players down the board here that could play roles. And Nabokov really helps hold this pool up above. But yeah, it's really not a promising pool, especially after trading your top guy in Cal Ritchie. But that's the thing that you got to do to win. It unfortunately didn't work out for the Avalanche. So we'll see where they go from here with this prospect pool. At number 26, the Vegas Golden Knights, another team, they want to win. They don't have a good prospect pool. There's a trend here at the bottom. These rankings are very trend-based. These guys all have that one prospect that holds them up above these other bottom prospect pools, and you get up to some mediocre middling teams and the top teams, and it's the battle of depth and star power. But for Vegas, they've got a decent little prospect pool here. Trevor Connolly, their first round pick this past year. They've taken an interesting path with his development. He had not a great year in the NCAA, like nothing that was like worth noting in terms of like, oh, this guy's just on the verge of NHL readiness. Yet they signed his ELC, and he's now going to play for Henderson this next season. He ended up scoring 4 points in 6 games for Henderson since coming over. So, there's something there. But he only had 13 points in 23 NCAA games for Providence. It was his first NCAA season. So I'm not really sure what their thought process is there. I would have let him develop one more year in the NCAA, maybe let him hit the transfer portal and get to a better school with more talent, maybe. I don't know, but I didn't understand this move at all. He had a pretty solid World Juniors. He looked pretty good. He fit in well at that level, so that was positive for him. But yeah, I'm a little unsure on the choice to sign his ELC at this age. But they did it, and he'll be playing for Anderson next year, so we'll see how that goes. They've got a pair of decent goalie prospects in Carl Lindbaum and Pavel Wojciech, both of whom look to be promising guys who could play a role in maybe a backup in the future for the Vegas Golden Knights. Lindbaum, the first guy, has been playing in the SHL and the Hockey Allsvenskan these past few years. This past season, though he played his first season in the AHL, had a .912 save percentage and 36 starts, so pretty good year for him. And then Pavel Wojciech has been a top goalie over in the KHL these past couple seasons, and he looks like to be a promising player as well. Then Tuomas Juronen, a solid player for Kingston. He had a pretty good breakout season this year in the OHL, put up some decent numbers over there for Kingston, and had a decent run. I believe he played a little bit for the junior team here for Finland, and he's been decent there as well. Just a real solid season. He had a riser up to the near the back end of my prospect rankings, so I wasn't really familiar with his game, a former 6th round pick. But yeah, he got traded away from the 67s, 90 points in 63 games, a good breakout for him. And then yeah, he had 3 points in 7 games for the junior team in Finland. Matthew Cataford has been bounced around a little bit this past in the QMJHL these past few years, and he also played for the Canadian junior team. And I was a little surprised he made the team, to be honest. I thought he should have been a cut, but he filled a role decently well on the 4th line as a 4th line two-way center. Nothing too crazy there. I think that's kind of what his role would end up being if he ever makes the full-time jump to the NHL level. But he's been playing for Rimouski over in the QMJHL, and in Rimouski, they just got bounced out of the Memorial Cup, so his season has come to an end The Rimouski made a pretty good run, but they just weren't on that level of the other teams as the host. Yeah, 18 points in 12 playoff games for Cataford. He had a good season after being traded from Halifax this offseason. And another goalie in Whitehead, and a player who used to look really promising in Lucas Cormier has kind of just stagnated and hasn't really reached his potential either. Down the board here, another one of those guys in that tier. But yeah, so a decent pool, honestly, for Vegas, all things considered. And I think there's some potential in a guy like Euronin to be something moving forward. And with how much they sell their prospects, the fact they even have this many is almost impressive. So they find themselves at number 26 on this list, and the last team of this episode at number 25, the Toronto Maple Leafs. Their pool has kind of stayed the same since the past ranking. Nothing's really changed overly big in their pool. No graduates. Traded away a couple guys like Fraser Minton and and they traded with Philly to get Scott Lawton. They traded away Nikita Grabankin, blanked on the name there, Nikita Grabankin for Scott Lawton there as a part of that deal with a first-round pick. So those were two decent AHL guys who they traded away. But beyond that, obviously they're held up by Easton Cowan, who's a really good prospect, has had some really good seasons for London. I'm not sold on his game as much as some other people are. I don't know how it's going to translate. We'll see. He should end up making the NHL roster for Toronto, considering the changes they'll be going through. I imagine he'll make a spot in the middle six on the wing. But yeah, the thing with Cowan is I think there's a lot of talent there, but sometimes the mental side just, I don't see it, and the energy, effort side, I don't see it. And for the main reason for that, the main reason for my skepticism is watching him at the juniors when he's playing with a lot of other high-skilled players against high-skilled players. Not that lopsided game you see in the CHL. He tries to do too much himself, and he tries to play hero puck, and it doesn't seem to work out. He does too much. He doesn't make the right decisions in high-pressure moments, and it backfires on him, and he really just hasn't been able to put up good production or consistent work at the junior level, or in the World Juniors. For the OHL, he's been a great player for London. London's been a wagon of a team, but I think that partly plays into his production. He's still a great prospect. He's still a really talented player, and I think he will be a solid middle sixer maybe, but I just don't see the high-end upside that a lot of other people see in him. Then you have their other first-round pick from 2024, Ben Danford, another guy who felt was a reach at the time, similar to Cowan, but unlike Cowan, he hasn't really taken a massive production or developmental leap the following season. Danford looks to be a decent, maybe like a bottom pair kind of guy to be a defensive shutdown defenseman. So he's got the shutdown ability, but yeah, I'm not sure. I don't see a ton of potential in Danford, but he's still a solid piece. Dennis Hildeby, decent. It's been a good goaltending prospect, but again, it's been partially a tough spot for him to make the jump to the NHL level. He's at the point where he's ready to take that leap, but the Leafs aren't in a position where they can afford to let a young rookie goalie take the reins. So we'll see if eventually that changes, but I think with Woll and Stolarz, odds are Hildeby's going to be limited for opportunity, and his production took a bit of a hit in the AHL level, and then played a few NHL games and really was not that impressive. But he's still a solid prospect who I think could be a backup or a 1B maybe down the line. But the issue is he's 23 now, and I just don't see an opportunity opening up for him in Toronto. To me, if I'm the Leafs, if a team is looking for a goalie prospect in a trade to trade a win now kind of player, I would be totally open to the possibility of moving him to try and help your team. And then down the board here, Noah Chadwick has had a decent breakout couple seasons. After being a 6th-round pick, he looks pretty impressive. Ahead of the curve for normal 6th-round picks. Toby Niemela has really another guy who's highly touted or decently touted and has yet to be able to find his game and take the jump to the NHL level. And similar to Hildeby, I don't see an opportunity opening up with the way the Leafs decor looks right now, so that's another tough spot for him. Jacob Krillin was one of the top UDFA, NCAA undrafted free agents this past year, this past summer, and he signed with Toronto, and he just didn't have a great season. There's still some things that he can continue to develop, but he's 23 and just didn't really have a crazy good season. He was good, but nothing too crazy for a 23-year-old in the AHL, about just on par level. Wasn't quite the level of like a Justin Harwickian for Dallas, who really tore it up. So we'll see where he goes, but still decent. Artur Akhtiamov, a decent goaltending prospect who maybe turns into something down the line. But yeah, that's the Leafs pool. Decent, held up by Cowan there, even though I'm not as high on him. He still is a prospect that can hold up a prospect pool that doesn't really have much else behind it. And yeah, that'll do it for the first episode here, 32 through 25 of the prospect pools in the NHL. Yeah, be sure to like, subscribe, comment your thoughts down below. If you think there's a team that's too low, they'll be out in the next episodes. I'll give you my thoughts on them there. Maybe I'll be able to reason with what you're disagreeing with. But yeah, be sure to comment any thoughts down below. Got a lot of love on the last NHL mock draft. Love talking in the comments. Love doing those little debates. So be sure to leave your thoughts down there and like and subscribe to see the rest of the parts that'll be coming out in the rest of the week. So stay tuned for more. Thanks for watching.